My name is Maya Ellison. I'm 31, and I'm an ER nurse in Austin, Texas. I rent a little bungalow off South First with a lemon tree that refuses to fruit and a cracked porch I keep meaning to fix. My emotional trait? I've always been too. Trusting. The kind of woman who believes apologies, covers shifts, and assumes we're a family means something. Soft exhale. That's how they got me. That's how they humiliated me for years. They joked about my mistakes, hid critical charts, and called me Mascot Maya behind my back. Until the night a patient nearly died and they tried to hang it on me. That's when I made them pay. If you're watching this, please like and subscribe. It helps more than you know, especially for stories like this that some people would rather never see daylight. Soft laugh, then steady. And I want to hear from you. Have you ever been pushed out by a clique that swore they were your family? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what you would have done in my shoes. Okay, deep breath. Let me back up. My hospital sits on a hill where the buses sigh up the grade and the city's heat clings to the stucco like a damp hand. I used to love walking into those sliding glass doors at 6:42 a.m., badge in one hand, coffee in the other. I liked the ritual. Inventory meds, count syringes, check the crash cart, inspect the ventilator. There's a peace before the sirens begin, before the drunk drivers and the stalled hearts and the kids with fevers so high you can feel heat before you touch skin. When I first started at St. Bridget's, my preceptor was a tall, whip-smart charge, nurse named Caroline, honey blonde hair, nails like pink shells, a laugh that snapped heads around. She was the queen bee of nights, and people orbited her, techs who wanted the easy assignment, residents hoping for gentle evals, administrators who liked clean numbers and calmer reports. Caroline would wrap an arm around my shoulder and say, "You're one of us, Maya. This place eats people alive unless you stick together." Fond smile. I believed her. I always believed people. But there were signs, inside jokes that stopped. When I walked in, an extra oops in my supply drawer, IV tubing swapped for the wrong line. A chart was misplaced just long enough to make me look late. The first time they called me Mascot Maya, I laughed because they were laughing, because it sounded cute, harmless, voice shaking. I didn't know it was a leash. See, the ER runs on adrenaline and shame. Do your best, and if you stumble, you get the look. Nurses know. We joke so we don't drown. But some jokes are knives. Caroline's second in command, Lena, had the sharpest. Mascot Maya, she'd sing-song when I stood up for a patient. So noble, so pure. Pure means naive. Noble means annoying. Mascot means decorative. The humiliation wasn't loud at first. It was precise. My assignments rusted overnight. Heavier patients, more admits. The combative drunk who'd bitten 2 nurses last week. The team huddle would end, and someone would whisper, "Hey Maya, can you cover that hallway? You're a rock star." A rock star is a nurse who picks up slack without asking why there's so much of it. The night everything changed was a Thursday. In late July, storm thunder stacked over the city like bruises. We were short-staffed, dry laugh, when are we not? And the ambulance bay lit up every 10 minutes with sirens that prickled my skin. At 3:12 a.m., the paramedics wheeled in septic middle-aged man, fever burning, blood pressure sliding toward the floor. I called for IV fluids, broad-spectrum antibiotics, a lactate draw. I turned to the Pyxis machine and my override access failed. Twice. I tried Caroline's code. She was the charge. She always had a spare. "1 sec," she called from the nurse's station, eyes focused on a spreadsheet. "It's lagging." "Caroline," I said, steady but loud. "I need Zosyn now." She raised a finger. "Hold, Mascot." By the time pharmacy re-verified, by the time Caroline sauntered over, it had been 9 minutes. The patient's pressure hit 68/40. We bagged him. We pushed fluids. We pushed epinephrine. We stabilized him on a thread, a shoelace. A miracle. You don't talk about because the math says we shouldn't have made it. When the attending asked why antibiotics were delayed, Caroline's eyebrow rose. Maya's still learning the override flow, she said, cool. We're teaching. The word felt like a lint roller over something rotten. A day later, risk management called me in. A complaint had been filed against me about repeated delays, lost charts, mismanaged meds, pattern of disorganization. The file included timestamps and screen grabs. A highlight reel of my worst moments, all coincidentally connected to nights when Caroline controlled assignments and Lena watched my bay like a hawk. I walked out of that meeting with cold hands and a colder face. Outside, the Texas sun beat the parking lot white. I sat behind the wheel and realized my coffee cup from the morning had 2 lipstick stains. One was mine. One was not. For years I had let them carry me, dangle me like a charm on a bracelet that made them look good. I was harmless, right? The girl who volunteers, the girl who doesn't complain, the girl whose car leaks a little oil and who buys break room cupcakes when the census spikes. And then they tried to make me the fall guy, the fall girl, for a near fatality. Steady. That was my line. That was my last, yes. I'm not proud of the next part. Actually, I am. I just wish I'd done it sooner. I grew up in Round Rock, just north of Austin, one of those suburbs where cul-de-sacs curve like commas, and every front yard has a lawn service magnet on the mailbox. My mom, Dina, teaches 3rd grade and knows how to soothe a room with a single clap. My dad, Robert, is a lineman with forearms like braided rope. He taught me knots before I could spell Chablis. We are not a drama family. Birthdays mean potluck enchiladas and a cake from H-E-B. Christmas is flannel pajamas and my mom's nutmeg punch that drinks like a hug. We had traditions, small ones. If you cried, my mom's rule was table or porch. Kitchen table if you want advice, back porch if you want company and silence. No shame either way. I learned to pick the porch when I couldn't explain why I cried. I learned there's a holy hush in just being next to someone who refuses to leave. I wish I had gone to the porch sooner. Instead, I told my parents half-truths about the ER. Long week, I'd say. We lost one. New charge nurse is detail-oriented. I didn't tell them that the detail was me, that Caroline's smile tightened whenever I corrected a documentation error, that Lena's hands fluttered to her throat when I questioned a patient assignment that felt like punishment. I didn't say that a tech whispered, "They're sharpening knives," when I walked by. At home, I was the helpful daughter. I changed the oil in my dad's truck. I cleaned the gutters after the spring storms. I brought my mom a new tote with little lemons on it and said, "For your lesson plans?" And she said, "For your porch crying." Soft laugh. She always saw more than I gave her. My family's stubborn kindness made the ER's cruelty feel surreal, like waking up in the wrong room. But I also know I invited some of it. Steady. Too trusting. That's my flaw and my armor. It made me good with patients. Teens in crisis, lonely veterans, a grandmother praying under her breath while I threaded a line. But with colleagues, trusting made me pliable. I covered holidays. I absorbed gripes. I laughed off the digs because it was just stress. I believed Caroline when she said she'd fix my schedule mix-up after budget week. I believed Lena when she swore the missing narc count would sort itself out and that everyone knows you're above board. There were cracks, early ones I painted over. The first month, I earned the praise of a hard-edged trauma surgeon. Ellison, that's clean work. And the next week, I found my locker lock jammed with superglue. A coincidence, said the girls. Mascot Maya, Lena sang, pinching my cheek. We just love you. When I started dating Evan, a paramedic who worked the 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. rig, the jokes warmed into gossip. Evan was steady, sweet, the kind of man who buys your favorite granola without being asked. Caroline teased, "Must be nice to have inside info on ETA," and I blushed. But after a month, Evan pulled back. Fewer texts, polite excuses, a phantom where a man used to be. The night before he ended it, I saw him at the nurse's station, talking to Caroline. She leaned, really leaned, like gravity had moved into his shoulder. I walked in, and she didn't step back. He broke up with me outside the cafeteria under a flickering light. "You're intense," he said. "I think you need the ER more than a person." I said calmly, "Who told you that?" He stared at the concrete. "People talk," he murmured. "It's a small world," I wanted to argue. Instead, I went home, sat on my porch, and texted my mom. "Porch or table?" She wrote back, "Porch. I'll bring punch." She sat with me until the mosquitoes chased us in. She didn't ask questions. The silence meant, "I believe you, even when you don't say it." Work tightened after that. My shift started to feel like a gauntlet choreographed to make me miss just enough steps. A lab sample went missing from my tray. It turned up later under a stack by Lena's elbow. An attending told me I was late with an insulin drip. My chart showed I'd started it 20 minutes earlier than he thought. Caroline smiled, teeth neat as piano keys. "Documentation can be so tricky," she said, sympathetic. "We'll workshop it." The sepsis night, the delayed antibiotics, wasn't an outlier. It was the culmination. The next morning, when Risk handed me the file, it felt like reading a biography written by an enemy who'd learned my handwriting. The lipstick on my coffee lid, tiny, coral, told a second story. I'd been touched without consent, messed with, claimed. I drove to Round Rock. I didn't mean to. My car knew the way. My mom was lesson planning at the table. My dad was changing the air filter, and my childhood bedroom still had the glow-in-the-dark stars I stuck to the ceiling at 12. "Porch or table?" my mom asked, voice like a blanket. "Porch," I said. But words this time. So I told them. Not all of it, not yet. Just enough for my dad's jaw to clench, for my mom's hands to fold, unfold, fold again. "You're not crazy," my mom said, calm. "You're not imagining this." My dad, who has never tolerated bullies, stared at the lemon tree leaves rattling in the evening wind. "You want me to make a call?" he asked, dangerously quiet. "Because I squeezed his arm. "No, Dad, not that call. There's a point where humiliation turns into architecture. You start building a plan just to give your shame a door." That night on the porch, I got out a pen. I drew boxes like we do for code blues. Assess, stabilize, intervene, evaluate. I wrote names. Caroline, Lena, Evan. I wrote risk, pharmacy, IT, union rep, and board of nursing. I circled timestamp logs. I circled Pyxis audit trails. I circled assignment sheets and incident reports that didn't match my memory. My mom watched me draw. "You're going to do this clean," she said. "I know you." I nodded. Trusting had made me easy prey. But trusting also meant I believed in systems, and systems leave footprints. They thought they'd erased my name. They forgot the floor. Remembers everything, the soft crush of shoes, the codes keyed in with manicured nails, the delays filed under teaching. I went home to the bungalow. I stood on my broken porch, and I made a vow, unspoken but binding. I would not scream. I would not beg. I would not be their mascot. I would become the one thing the queen bees fear, a nurse who knows where every bone is buried. The first real cracks didn't come as explosions. They came as whispers, threads you trip over before you ever see them. I remember one night in September, just before flu season slammed us. The ER was humming, ventilators hissing, families pacing, monitors chattering in uneven symphonies. I'd been assigned 3 patients, but midway through the shift, Caroline sidled over with that smile she wore like perfume. "Hey, Mascot," she murmured. "Could you take Bay 6? He's agitated. You're good with the difficult ones." I glanced at the assignment sheet. Bay 6 wasn't mine. "Who was covering him?" I asked. "Does it matter?" She shrugged. "You're a team player, Bay. 6 was a combative drunk, spitting and cursing, hands twitching like they wanted to find a fight. I wrestled with restraints, soothed his slurred rage, and documented every word. When the dust settled, Caroline swept by, tapping the chart. "Took a while, didn't it?" Smirk. "Don't worry, you'll get faster." That was the pattern. They set me up with the hardest patients, those who drain you, who break your body and your spirit, and then stood back, stopwatches hidden behind their polite grins. And if I succeeded, if I calmed the storm, they still found a way to spin it as a stumble. The second crack came through Lena. She had a way of turning every casual moment into a cutting theater. One evening, I was charting vitals, hair tied back, in a messy bun when she leaned over my shoulder. "Aw, you're still documenting like it's nursing school." "So thorough, so slow." "I'd rather be accurate," I said. She tilted her head. "Sure, accuracy's cute, but when you're drowning, no one cares if you dot every I." I clenched my pen so tight it squeaked. The truth is, thoroughness was my shield. I believed that if I worked twice as hard, no one could take aim. But they used it against me, framing diligence as weakness, patience as incompetence. The third crack wasn't quiet. It was loud, public, humiliating. A trauma came in, a teenager, a car wreck, glass in his abdomen, controlled chaos. The trauma surgeon barked for instruments, anesthesia scrambled, and I was prepping lines when Caroline raised her voice over the fray. "Maya, not there. Don't touch the sterile field." Dozens of eyes flicked toward me. My hands froze. I wasn't touching sterile anything. I was 6 inches away, prepping tubing, but the accusation had already landed. I felt my ears burn, my face flush. Later, when I pulled her aside, my voice low. "Why did you call me out like that? I wasn't even near the drape." She smiled. "Perception is reality. If the surgeon thought you were too close, that's what matters. I'm protecting you. Protecting me. Like a cat protects a mouse it's toying with." At home, I tried to shake it off. I jogged the trail along Lady Bird Lake, earbuds stuffed with music loud enough to drown my own thoughts. I sat on my porch, lemon tree leaves whispering in the warm dusk, and told myself it was stress, that everyone gets hazed, that I just had to earn my stripes. But deep down, I knew better. These weren't accidents. These were rehearsals. Every Mascot Maya chant, every swapped assignment, every public correction. They were sharpening the blade, testing how deep it could cut before I screamed. And me? I still thought I could laugh it off. I still thought that if I just worked harder, they'd stop seeing me as prey. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Because the major betrayal, the one that broke me, was waiting just around the corner. It was a Wednesday night in October. The kind of night when the ER feels like a living, breathing monster. Sirens screaming, families sobbing in corners, the scent of bleach fighting a losing battle against blood and sweat. I'd been on my feet for 9 hours, hair plastered to my forehead, scrubs damp from too many traumas. At 11:47 p.m., a middle-aged woman was wheeled in, collapsed at home, barely responsive. Her vitals were unstable. I immediately started charting, ordered labs, and reached for the crash cart. But when I pulled up her medication list in the system, I froze. There was a note, allergic to penicillin, documented by Nurse Ellison. Only, I had never touched that patient before tonight. The attending barked, "Why would you give Zosyn if you documented an allergy, Maya? Do you want to kill her?" My throat tightened. I didn't document that. I just opened her chart. Caroline stepped forward, calm as a surgeon with perfect hands. Maya, we talked about being more careful with your documentation. She shook her head slightly, like a mother disappointed in her child. You need to own this. The room went cold. Nurses exchanged glances. The attending cursed under his breath. I felt my chest seize, shame crawling up my spine. It was a setup. A deliberate edit in the chart made it look like I had nearly killed a patient. I stood there, fingers trembling over the keyboard, heat pounding in my ears. For years they'd laughed, whispered, shifted blame. But this was different. This was an official strike, a career killer. The woman stabilized. By some miracle, she pulled through. But the damage to me, already done. By morning, risk management had an incident report waiting, a bright red flag next to my name. I sat in that office, the fluorescent lights buzzing like wasps above me. A compliance officer read off the allegations: repeated documentation errors, unsafe medication practices, failure to follow protocols. Each word was a dagger, each phrase another brick sealing my coffin. And Caroline? She sat across from me, lips pressed in sympathetic concern. Lena, too, nodded gravely, like dutiful witnesses. I wanted to scream, they did this. They sabotaged me. But I knew how it would sound. Paranoid, desperate, like a rookie nurse who couldn't handle the pressure. I walked out of that meeting with tears burning my eyes, but I didn't cry. Not yet. Crying felt like letting them win. Instead, I drove home in silence, headlights cutting through the empty Texas highways. The city sprawled behind me like a monster that had finally swallowed me whole. On my porch, under the useless lemon tree, I finally broke. My hands shook. My chest heaved. For the first time, I thought, maybe they'll take everything from me. My license, my career, my future. And then something shifted. I remembered my dad's voice. You want me to make a call? I remembered my mom's calm certainty. You're not imagining this. I remembered every smirk, every whisper, every lipstick stain. That wasn't mine. That was the night humiliation died. That was the night I decided. If they wanted war, I'd give them war. Not with fists, not with screams, but with the one thing they never expected from me. Proof. Cold, undeniable, inescapable. Proof. The week after that betrayal felt like drowning in molasses. Every shift was heavier, every glance sharper, every whisper thicker with venom. I came in one night and found my locker door wide open. My stethoscope was missing, my badge tossed on the floor, and my spare scrubs soaked with what smelled like apple juice, or maybe urine. I stood there staring at the mess, and I swear I heard someone snicker down the hall. I bent down, picked up my badge, and clipped it back on my chest with shaking hands. My reflection in the dented metal locker stared back at me, pale, exhausted, eyes rimmed red. Mascot Maya. Mascot Maya. That night, Caroline handed me a triple assignment, 3 high-acuity patients, all in different bays. You can handle it, she said sweetly, squeezing my shoulder. You're such a hard worker. By 2 a.m., I was drowning. One patient's blood pressure tanked. Another vomited across the floor. The third screamed for pain meds while the order still sat unsigned. And as I scrambled from bay to bay, I caught sight of Lena leaning against the counter, arms crossed, watching. Just watching. When I finally caught a breath, I ducked into the supply closet, shut the door, and slid to the floor. My chest was tight, breath shallow, tears pressing hot at the corners of my eyes. I pressed my fist against my mouth to keep from sobbing too loudly. For years, I'd been the strong one, the reliable one, the one who covered shifts and smiled through insults. But in that moment, I felt hollow. Like maybe they were right. Maybe I was incompetent. Maybe I was the problem. I pulled out my phone and opened a draft resignation letter. To whom it may concern, I typed. Effective immediately. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. And then, I remembered something. A boy I once treated. 17, a gunshot wound, terrified and bleeding out. He'd looked me in the eye, voice shaking, and whispered, "Don't let me die. Please." And I had promised. I had kept that promise. I wasn't incompetent. I wasn't a joke. I wasn't a mascot. I closed the draft, shoved the phone in my pocket, and took a long, ragged breath. Steady. If they wanted to break me, they were going to have to work harder, because I was done playing defense. The next morning, I called in sick. Not because I was sick, but because I needed space. Space to think. Space to plan. I sat at my kitchen table, coffee in one hand, a legal pad in the other, and wrote one word at the top of the page: evidence. I knew the hospital's systems weren't flawless, but they were meticulous. Every med pull, every badge swipe, every Pyxis override, logged with timestamps. Every chart edit, recorded with a user ID. Every assignment sheet, saved in admin folders. Caroline and Lena might have thought they were clever, but the system remembered. I started small. I filed a routine request to IT for access logs on my badge. Accidentally locked out, I explained. A tech emailed me a spreadsheet of every swipe. I highlighted the ones where my badge was used on nights I wasn't even scheduled. Next, I befriended the night pharmacist, Jared, a quiet guy with tired eyes and a soft spot for nurses who said thank you. Over break one night, I casually asked, "Hey, how long do Pyxis audit trails get stored?" He shrugged. "Forever, technically. Why?" "Just curious." I smiled, handed him a donut, and watched his eyebrows lift like I'd given him gold. Started pulling old reports, incident logs, patient assignments, narc count sheets. I compared them to my own notes, to the texts I'd saved from other nurses. Slowly, a pattern emerged. Errors, tied to shifts where Caroline or Lena had control. Delays that happened when they were in charge of access. But I needed more than patterns. I needed something undeniable. So I planted a trap. The next shift, I left my locker closed but not locked, with a folded piece of paper inside. On it, in big black letters, I wrote, "Smile, you're on camera, of I." Course there wasn't a camera. Not yet. But I wanted them paranoid. I wanted them sloppy. Meanwhile, I borrowed a discreet body cam from my cousin, who used it for biking downtown. Tucked it into my scrub pocket, lens peeking through the fabric. That night, when Caroline accidentally reassigned me mid-shift, I recorded every word. Caroline. Sweet. Maya, can you just cover Bay 12 too? I'll owe you one. Me. That makes 5 patients. That's unsafe. Lena. Mascots. Learning to say no. How cute. Every sneer, every dig, every manipulative smile. It was all there. At home, I backed up the footage, labeled every file, and built a timeline. The humiliation that once crushed me was now fuel. Every insult is another nail in their coffin. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to show the world exactly who they were and watch them burn in the light of truth. They thought I was too trusting. They thought I was harmless. They were about to find out just how dangerous a nurse with receipts could be. When you've been humiliated long enough, even the smallest victory feels like oxygen. My first win came on a quiet Monday, when I submitted an anonymous tip to compliance. Just one sentence. Check Pyxis access logs against patient assignments for July-September. 2 days later, an email circulated from Risk. Routine systems. Audit this quarter. No cause for concern. But I saw the way Caroline's jaw tightened, the way Lena's eyes darted when the pharmacist walked by with a clipboard. They were sweating, even if only a little. And that felt good. Tested more traps. During one shift, I left a chart deliberately half complete and stepped away for a bathroom break. When I returned, someone had corrected it, adding an error I supposedly made. But the body cam caught Lena hovering at my desk, tapping away at my login. That night, I clipped the footage, labeled it Evidence number 14, unauthorized chart edit. Another time, I asked Jared, the pharmacist, to double-check a narc discrepancy that Caroline had signed off on. Weird, he muttered, frowning at the log. This says she pulled it with your code. My code? I asked, feigning confusion. That can't be right. Unless you were in two places at once, he said, shaking his head. I smiled politely, but inside, I burned with vindication. And the final small win? My patient scores. The hospital sent out post-visit surveys, and despite the rumors, despite the sabotage, my patients raved. Maya listened. Maya saved my son. Maya explained every step. Numbers don't lie. Neither do people whose lives you've held in your hands. For the first time in years, I walked into the ER with my head a little higher. Not smug, not reckless, just steady. Because I knew the cracks in their empire were spreading. Storm hit in late November. By then, I had weeks of footage, logs, and reports. Every insult, every manipulated chart, every false assignment. Filed, time-stamped, backed up in triplicate. I wasn't just collecting scraps. I was building a bomb, Trigger? A disciplinary hearing. HR emailed me. Final review regarding repeated documentation issues. The subtext was clear. One more strike, and I'd lose my license. I walked into that conference room with shaking hands, but not from fear, from anticipation. Caroline sat across the table, legs crossed, looking calm, professional. Lena flanked. Her lips pressed tight like a loyal soldier. The compliance officer, risk rep, and chief nursing officer sat at the head, folders stacked, pens ready. They began. Maya, we've received multiple reports of unsafe practices, repeated charting, errors, insubordination. I let them talk. I let them build their case. And then, pause, steady, I opened my laptop. Actually, I said softly, I'd like to share some documentation of my own. Click. Up came the first video. Lena mocking me at the nurse's station, Caroline smirking as she reassigned. Unsafe patients. Their voices are clear as day. Click. The next file, Pixis logs proving my badge had been used while I wasn't even scheduled. Click. Timestamp comparisons showing chart edits under their IDs that were later blamed on me. With every slide, their faces drained of color. Caroline shifted in her chair, and Lena's hands twitched in her lap. The compliance officer leaned forward, adjusting his glasses. Who gave you access to this footage? I met his eyes. Myself. I was protecting my license. Silence. Heavy. Electric. Finally, the chief nursing officer spoke, voice clipped. Caroline, Lena, step outside. They froze. Excuse me? Caroline asked, shaken. Step. Outside. The door closed behind them, and the room exhaled. The officer looked at me, expression unreadable. You realize this is significant. I realize, I said. My voice didn't shake this time. And I realize I'm not the only nurse they've done this to. I just might be the first one with proof. By the end of that week, Caroline was placed on administrative leave. Lena, too. Whispers spread through the ER like wildfire. Did you hear? Maya had receipts. They're done. And me? For the first time in years, I wasn't Mascot Maya. I was the nurse who stood up, the nurse who fought back. The night I walked out of that hospital, crisp air biting my cheeks, I swear the lemon tree at home looked different. stronger, like it was waiting to fruit at last. The days after that hearing felt surreal, like the ER had been scrubbed clean, the air itself lighter. For years, I'd walk those halls with dread heavy in my stomach. Now, for the first time, I felt free. Caroline and Lena vanished from the schedule overnight. Officially, it was administrative leave pending investigation. Unofficially, everyone knew the truth. Word spread faster than any trauma code ever had. They'd been caught. At first, some nurses were wary of me. I saw the side glances, the whispered, "Is it true?" in the break room. But then something shifted. A tech patted my shoulder and said quietly, "Thank you. Nobody ever had the guts." Another nurse slipped me a note that just said, "You saved us all." Not everyone. Celebrated? A few of Caroline's loyalists muttered that I was a snitch, that I'd ruined good nurses' careers. But I didn't flinch, because I knew what those good nurses had done to me, to patients, to the integrity of the job. The hospital launched a full audit. Patterns emerged, medication pulls that didn't add up, chart edits tied to Caroline's login, complaints mysteriously pinned on younger nurses. It wasn't just me. I was just the one who caught them in the act. One evening, I got a call from Risk. The officer's voice was calm, almost kind. "Maya, after reviewing your evidence, we've closed your disciplinary file. There will be no marks on your record. No marks." 2 words and I nearly cried. At home, I stood under that stubborn lemon tree. For years, it had refused to fruit. But that night, I noticed tiny green buds, clinging stubbornly to the branches. Soft laugh. It felt like a sign. Like maybe healing. Had roots I couldn't see until now, but revenge is never clean. Caroline lawyered up, filed a grievance, and claimed I was the one harassing her. HR dragged me back for statements. Lena sent me a text. Blocked number, but I knew it was her. "You think you won? Watch your back." I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because the truth was already unraveling them faster than I ever could, and me? I finally slept. For the first time in years, I lay down, closed my eyes, and didn't replay insults in the dark. It's been 6 months since that hearing. Caroline and Lena never came back. Word is their licenses are under review. The ER is different now, still chaotic, still brutal, but without the knives hidden in smiles. I'm not naive anymore. I know workplaces can be cruel, that clicks, can destroy, that people will sharpen your trust into a blade against you. But I also know this: humiliation doesn't have to be permanent. If you fight smart, if you gather proof, trust yourself, and refuse to back down, you can reclaim your power. I still walk past the lemon tree every morning. And now, when I see those small yellow fruits growing where once there was nothing, I remind myself, resilience takes time. But when it finally blooms, it's unstoppable. If this story touched you, please like and subscribe to Unspoken Vows. And tell me, would you forgive after such betrayal, or walk away forever? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments, because sometimes the only vow worth keeping is the one you make to yourself.